Dr. Kung Minho stared at the numbers on his screen for the 100th time that morning. His eyes burned from lack of sleep, but he could not look away. After 15 years of failure, the impossible had finally happened. The quantum field readings were stable deep beneath the streets of Seoul, in a research facility that officially did not exist. Minho had just achieved what every alien species in the galaxy claimed was beyond human capability. He had folded space. The laboratory hummed with quiet energy. Banks of quantum computers lined the walls, their cooling systems creating a constant whisper of white noise. In the center of the room sat his life's work, a device no larger than a refrigerator that could bend the very fabric of reality. Ji-Wan, come look at this, Minho called to his colleague across the room. Dr. Park Ji-Wan looked up from her engineering station. She had been working on the containment field generators since dawn, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. Coffee stains decorated her lab coat like medals of dedication. Please tell me those are not error readings again, Ji-Wan said as she walked over. She had seen Minho's excitement turn to disappointment too many times before. No errors. Look at the stability index. Ji-Wan's eyes widened as she read the display. The quantum field was not just stable, it was perfectly controlled. The space folding effect was contained within a precise geometric boundary, exactly as their calculations had predicted. This cannot be real, she whispered. We actually did it. For months, they had been working on a theory that seemed crazy even to them. Instead of trying to punch holes through space like the aliens did with their crude wormhole technology, they would convince space to fold itself. The idea came from an old Korean philosophy about harmony and working with natural forces rather than against them. Run the test sequence again, Minho said. I need to be absolutely certain. Ma nodded and moved to her control station. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface as she initialized the quantum field generators. The device in the center of the room began to glow with soft blue light. Field generators online. Quantum resonance at optimal frequency. Beginning. Spacefold in 3, 2, 1. The air around the device shimmered like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Then, without sound or fury, a section of space simply folded. A metal ball that had been sitting on a table 3 meters away suddenly appeared inside the containment field, as if it had always been there. Distance folded, 3.7 meters. Duration, 12 seconds. No quantum decay detected. Ji-Wan reported, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Minho felt tears in his eyes. They had actually done it. They had bent space itself to their will. Something the Galactic Council insisted was impossible for a species as primitive as humans. The two scientists had met during their graduate studies at Seoul National University. Even then, Minho had been obsessed with spatial mechanics, while Ji-Wan focused on practical engineering applications. Their professors thought they were wasting their time on impossible theories. Do you remember what Professor Kim used to say? Ji-Wan asked, as if reading his thoughts. Humans lack the mental architecture for true spatial manipulation, Minho quoted. We should focus on technologies more suited to our limited cognitive abilities. They both laughed, but there was no humor in it. Professor Kim had been repeating the official position of Earth's scientific establishment, which had accepted the galaxy's judgment about human limitations. For 200 years, since first contact with the Corvin Empire, humanity had been told they were too young and too primitive to understand advanced spatial technologies. The Corvins will not believe this, Ji-Wan said. Neither will anyone else, Minho replied. We need to scale this up. We need to build something they cannot ignore. Over the following weeks, they worked in secret. Ji-Wan designed a spacefold drive that could be installed in a small spacecraft. Unlike the massive wormhole generators used by alien ships, their device was elegant and compact. It did not tear through space. It asked space to cooperate. The philosophy behind their breakthrough was as important as the technology. Ancient Korean thinkers had written about the interconnectedness of all things, the idea that everything in the universe was part of a greater harmony. Minho had applied this concept to quantum mechanics, treating spacetime not as something to be conquered, but as something to be understood and worked with. Space wants to fold, he explained to Juan as they calibrated the ship's systems. We are not forcing it. We are simply showing it how. The test ship was small and unremarkable on the outside. However, it contained technology that would revolutionize galactic travel. The quantum field generators were integrated into the ship's hull, creating a field effect that could fold space around the entire vessel. On the day of their first interstellar test, Minho felt calm. The mathematics were perfect. The engineering was sound. The philosophy was correct. It would work. Destination coordinates locked. G1 reported from the pilot seat. Alpha Centauri, 4.3 light years. Beginning spacefold sequence. Minho said. The ship's hull began to glow with the same soft blue light they had seen in the laboratory. Outside the viewports, the stars began to shimmer and bend. Space itself was responding to their call. Then, without any sense of movement or acceleration, they were somewhere else. The familiar constellations of Earth's night sky were gone, replaced by the twin suns of the Alpha Centauri system. Transit time, 0.03 seconds, G1 announced. No structural stress detected. Quantum field stable. They had just traveled over 4 light years in less time than it took to blink. No alien species had ever achieved instantaneous travel. Even the fastest wormhole generators required several minutes to establish a stable connection as they sat in their small ship, orbiting an alien star. Both scientists understood that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer the primitive species that needed protection from advanced galactic civilizations. They were the ones with the advanced technology now. What do we do now? Juan asked. Minho smiled as he looked out at the alien suns. Now we show the galaxy what humans can really do. The age of human isolation was about to end. Quantum diplomats were ready to make their entrance onto the galactic stage, and they would do it in a way that no one could ignore or dismiss. Space had been folded, and with it, all the old assumptions about human limitations. Ambassador Lee Hiron adjusted her formal diplomatic uniform as she stood on the bridge of Earth's first quantum diplomatic vessel. 3 months had passed since Dr. Kong Minho and Dr. Park Ji-won's breakthrough, and now humanity was ready to announce itself to the galaxy in a way no one could ignore. The ship was named Harmony, a name chosen to reflect Earth's new approach to galactic relations. Unlike the massive battlecruisers favored by other species, Harmony was sleek and elegant. Quantum field generators integrated seamlessly into its whole design. Ambassador, we are approaching the Galactic Council Station at Kepler 442b. Key, announced Captain Kim Dong-yuk from his position at the command station. The young captain had been handpicked for this mission, his calm demeanor and tactical brilliance, making him perfect for humanity's debut on the galactic stage. What is the status of other diplomatic vessels in the area? Hiron asked. 17 ships from various council member species are docked at the station, all using standard wormhole approach vectors. They have no idea we are here, Dong-yuk replied with a slight smile. For 200 years, the Galactic Council had maintained strict protocols for approaching their stations. Ships had to request permission days in advance, follow predetermined flight paths, and dock only at assigned ports. The system was designed to demonstrate the Council's authority and the visiting species' subservience. Hiron had different plans. Dr. Kang, are you ready? She asked. Minho looked up from his quantum field monitors. He had insisted on personally overseeing this first diplomatic mission. Understanding that humanity's future depended on making the right impression, quantum field generators are operating at peak efficiency. We can materialize anywhere within the station's defensive perimeter, he confirmed. The Galactic Council Station was an impressive structure, massive ring-shaped construct that housed diplomatic quarters for dozens of species. At its center was the Grand Assembly Hall, where the galaxy's most powerful civilizations gathered to make decisions that affected billions of lives. Earth had been excluded from these gatherings for centuries. The official reason was that humanity was too young and unstable to participate in galactic affairs. The real reason, everyone knew, was that the established powers preferred to keep potential competitors isolated. Beginning spacefold sequence, Captain Dong-Yuk announced. Destination, Diplomatic Quarter Alpha, directly outside the Corvan Empire's assigned section. The familiar blue glow surrounded Harmony as space began to bend around them. Unlike the violent energy discharges of wormhole travel, the quantum fold was silent and smooth. Space simply rearranged itself to accommodate their desire to be elsewhere. In an instant, they materialized inside the station's most restricted area. Alarms immediately began blaring throughout the diplomatic quarter. Security forces rushed toward their position, weapons drawn, expecting some kind of attack. Instead, they found a modest Earth vessel sitting calmly where no ship should be able to exist. "This is impossible," gasped Corvan Chancellor Breck as he emerged from his quarters. The tall, reptilian alien wore robes that displayed his high rank within the Empire that had dominated galactic politics for over 1,000 years. Ambassador Hiron stepped out of her ship, flanked by Captain Dong-Yuk, and Dr. Kang Shi walked toward the assembled alien dignitaries with the confidence of someone who held all the cards. "Chancellor Breck," she said with a polite bow. "I am Ambassador Lee Hiron of Earth. I apologize for the unannounced arrival, but we felt it was time to demonstrate humanity's readiness for full participation in galactic affairs." "How did you get here?" demanded Nexari. Collective Representative Zend. The cybernetic alien's mechanical components whirred with agitation. "No ship can penetrate our defensive systems without detection." "We folded space," Minho said simply. "Your sensors cannot detect what is not actually traveling through space." The assembled aliens stared at the humans in disbelief. Space folding was theoretical technology, something that existed only in the most advanced scientific papers. Even the Nexari Collective, widely considered the galaxy's technological leaders, had never achieved stable spatial manipulation. "Impossible," Chancellor Breck stated flatly. "Humans lack the cognitive capacity for true spatial mechanics. Your species cannot even create stable wormholes." Captain Dong-Yuk stepped forward. "Would you like us to demonstrate?" Before anyone could object, Dong-Yuk activated a small device on his wrist. Hair in the diplomatic quarter began to shimmer, and suddenly a pocket of folded space appeared in the middle of the group. Through the fold, he could see into the Grand Assembly Hall 50 levels below. The alien representatives jumped back in alarm. Creating stable spatial distortions inside a space station was incredibly dangerous. One miscalculation could tear the entire structure apart. Yet, the humans maintained perfect control over the effect. "As you can see," Ambassador Hiron said calmly, "humanity has developed certain capabilities that might be of interest to the Galactic Council." The spatial fold collapsed harmlessly, leaving no trace of its existence except in the memories of the stunned observers. Nexari, Representative Zen's optical sensors focused intently on the humans. "Your technology appears to surpass our current capabilities. This requires analysis." "Indeed," Chancellor Breck agreed, though his tone suggested he was less pleased by this development. "The Corvan Empire will need to evaluate these claims thoroughly." Ambassador Hiron smiled. "Of course, we understand that such revolutionary technology might be difficult to accept. Okay, perhaps We should schedule a formal presentation before the full Galactic Council. That will not be necessary, Breck said quickly. Earth's status as a protected species prevents full council participation. I believe our demonstrated capabilities suggest that Earth's status may need to be reconsidered, Hiram replied. After all, protection protocols were established because humanity was deemed too primitive to participate safely in galactic affairs. That assessment appears to require updating. The alien representatives exchanged glances. For centuries, they had maintained their positions of power by controlling access to advanced technologies. Suddenly, the species they had dismissed as primitive was demonstrating capabilities beyond their own. We will convene an emergency session of the council leadership, Representative Zend announced. Okay, this situation requires careful consideration. As the aliens dispersed to consult with their governments, Ambassador Hiram allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. The first phase of Earth's diplomatic revolution was complete. They had announced their presence in a way that could not be ignored or dismissed. Captain Dong-Yuk approached her. Do you think they will accept us as equals now? Not yet, Hiram admitted. They will test us first, okay? They need to prove to themselves that we are not a threat to their established order. And are we? He asked. Hiram looked out at the vast space station around them, filled with representatives of species that had kept humanity isolated for 2 centuries. Captain, she said, we are about to completely change their established order. Whether that makes you as a threat depends entirely on how willing they are to accept change. The age of human isolation was ending, but the real test was just beginning. Chancellor Breck stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council with barely controlled fury. The Grand Assembly Hall buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from dozens of species whispered among themselves about Earth's unexpected arrival. The humans have made impressive claims, Breck announced, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. But demonstrations in controlled environments prove nothing. If Earth truly possesses advanced spatial manipulation capabilities, they must prove it under real conditions. Ambassador Lee Hiram sat calmly in the observer section, flanked by Captain Kim Dong-Yuk and Dr. Kang Min-ho. She had expected this challenge. Established powers would not simply accept humanity's new status without testing their resolve. So, what do you propose, Chancellor? Asked Nixari, Representative Zend, her mechanical voice carrying across the hall. Breck's reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile. The Nexus Crisis. If humans can solve what our greatest scientists have failed to address for 30 years, then perhaps their claims have merit. A ripple of surprise ran through the assembly. The Nexus Crisis was the galaxy's greatest unsolved problem. At the edge of Corvin space, a quantum anomaly had been growing for decades, threatening to tear apart 3 entire star systems. The anomaly blocked the primary trade route between the galactic core and the Outer Rim territories. Chancellor Breck interrupted Ambassador Hiram as she stood. Might I ask what previous attempts have been made to resolve this crisis? Every major scientific institution in the galaxy has studied the anomaly, Breck replied. Alexari Collective deployed their most advanced quantum computers. The hegemony of Tau sent their greatest theoretical physicists. Even the mysterious Voidwalkers attempted to contain the disturbance. All failed. Captain Dong-Yuk leaned toward Hiram. This sounds like a trap. They expect us to fail publicly, which would justify keeping Earth isolated. Perhaps, Hiram whispered back. Or perhaps this is exactly the opportunity we need. Dr. Kang Min-ho had been studying data files about the Nexus Crisis since the challenge was announced. The quantum anomaly was unlike anything in Earth's experience, but the readings reminded him of something from his early research. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "I believe this might be solvable with our technology." Hiram stood again. "Earth accepts your challenge, Chancellor. We will attempt to resolve the Nexus crisis." The assembly erupted in surprised chatter. No one had expected the humans to accept such an impossible task. "Excellent," Breck said, satisfaction clear in his voice. "You will have access to all previous research data and can request any reasonable resources. However, you will work under full Council observation. If your attempt makes the anomaly worse, Earth will accept permanent isolation from galactic affairs." "Agreed," Hiram replied without hesitation. 3 days later, Dr. Usejan arrived at the Galactic Council station aboard the research vessel Discovery. The young quantum theorists had been working frantically on Earth, developing theories about the Nexus crisis based on the Council's data. "Dr. Kong," Sajan said as she joined the Earth team, "I believe I understand what we are dealing with. The anomaly is not actually destroying space, okay? It is trying to fold space, but it lacks the proper guidance." Minho studied her calculations with growing excitement. "You think the anomaly is a natural space folding phenomenon that has become unstable?" "Exactly. Okay. Previous attempts to contain or destroy it have only made it more chaotic. Okay. But if we can provide the right quantum resonance patterns, we might be able to guide it into a stable configuration." The journey to the Nexus took 2 days through conventional wormhole travel. The Earth's team traveled aboard a Council survey vessel, accompanied by observers from every major galactic power. The aliens wanted to witness humanity's failure firsthand. When they arrived at the anomaly site, even the humans were impressed by its scope. The quantum disturbance stretched across millions of kilometers, a writhing mass of twisted spacetime that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. Nearby star systems flickered in and out of visibility as the anomaly warped the very fabric of reality. "Readings confirm the anomaly is expanding at an accelerating rate," reported the survey ship's Nexari science officer. "Its current growth patterns, it will engulf the Kepler system within 6 months." Dr. Sechin activated her portable quantum analysis equipment. "The resonance patterns are chaotic, but there is an underlying structure. Space is trying to fold here naturally, probably due to some ancient cosmic event. We need to work with that natural tendency, not against it." "How do you propose to do that?" asked the Corvin observer, his tone suggesting he expected nonsense. "We create a quantum template," Minho explained. "Instead of trying to stop the folding process, we guide it toward a stable configuration. The anomaly becomes a controlled spacefold that connects both sides of the affected region." The alien observers looked skeptical. "You intend to turn a destructive anomaly into a functional transportation corridor?" asked the Nexari officer. "It's not just functional," Sejin added. "If we succeed, it will be faster and more stable than any artificial wormhole. A natural quantum field will sustain itself indefinitely." Captain Dong Yuk positioned the Earth ships at precise coordinates around the anomaly. The plan required perfect timing and coordination between multiple quantum field generators. "Beginning quantum template deployment," Minho announced. The Earth ships activated their space folding technology simultaneously. But instead of folding space around themselves, they projected their quantum fields toward the chaotic anomaly. The blue energy of their drives began to interact with the wild forces at the anomaly center. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the chaotic pulsing of the anomaly began to slow. The twisted spacetime started to organize itself into more regular patterns. "Template is taking hold," Sejin reported. "The anomaly is responding to our quantum guidance." The alien observers watched in amazement as the destructive forces gradually transformed into something beautiful. The chaotic distortions became a perfect geometric structure, a stable fold in space-time that connected both sides of the affected region. "Quantum resonance is stable," Minho announced. The anomaly has been successfully converted into a permanent spacefold corridor. A test probe sent through the new corridor emerged on the far side in perfect condition, having traveled instantly across what had previously been an impassable barrier. Impossible, whispered the Corvan observer. It's not impossible, Captain Dong-yuk replied. Just different from what you expected. Ambassador Hiron smiled as she watched the transformed anomaly. The Nexus crisis was solved, but more importantly, humanity had proven that their approach to space manipulation was not just different from the galaxy's established methods. It was better. The real test was not whether they could solve an impossible problem. The real test was whether the galaxy would accept that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs came from those who thought differently. The success at the Nexus site had created an unexpected problem for the Galactic Council. I could no longer dismiss humanity as primitive, but they were not ready to admit that Earth's technology was superior to their own. The solution was a joint research project to study the new spacefold corridor. Engineer Nam Tae-hoon arrived at the research station 3 weeks after the anomaly's transformation. He was part of a team of human scientists assigned to work alongside alien researchers in understanding how the stable fold operated. The aliens claimed they wanted to learn, but Tae-hoon suspected they were looking for weaknesses in human technology. The quantum resonance patterns make no sense according to our models, complained Dex. A Corvan engineer whose scaled hide showed the deep blue coloring of his high caste. Your space folding violates several fundamental principles of physics. Tae-hoon looked up from his analysis station. Perhaps the problem is not with our physics, but with your understanding of what is fundamental. Explain, Dex demanded, his voice carrying the arrogance typical of Corvan nobility. Your people see space as something to be conquered, Tae-hoon said calmly. You punch holes through it, tear pathways with brute force. We see space as something to work with, to convince rather than compel. At another workstation, Dr. Soyuna was explaining human consciousness theory to Vorn, a Nexari scientist whose cybernetic implants covered most of his original organic brain. You claim that biological consciousness plays a role in your space manipulation technology, Vorn said, his mechanical voice expressing skepticism. This contradicts all rational scientific principles. Technology should be purely objective, independent of organic thought patterns. Yuna smiled patiently. Our quantum field generators are designed to interface with human neural patterns. We can perceive multiple probability states simultaneously and guide the folding process through conscious intent. Impossible, Vorn stated. Organic consciousness is too chaotic and unpredictable for precise quantum manipulation. Watch, Una said simply. She activated a small quantum field generator on her workbench. Instead of following a programmed sequence, the device responded to her thoughts. The field shifted and changed as she visualized different spatial configurations, creating complex patterns that no computer program could replicate. The field is responding to your brainwaves, Vaughan observed, his optical sensors recording every detail. But this should create random, unstable effects. Only if you assume consciousness is random, Una replied. Human awareness can hold multiple realities in balance. You can see the quantum possibilities and choose which one becomes real. Across the research station, similar conversations were happening between humans and aliens. The joint research project was becoming something neither side had expected. A cultural exchange that challenged fundamental assumptions about reality. Captain Kim Dong-yuk walked through the station's main corridor, observing the interactions between species that had rarely worked together as equals. The formal barriers were breaking down as alien scientists found themselves genuinely curious about human methods. Captain, called Engineer Dex, as Dong-yuk passed the main laboratory, I require clarification about your people's approach to quantum mechanics. Dong-yuk paused. Over the past weeks, he had watched the proud Corvin engineer's hostility slowly transform into genuine interest. What specifically troubles you, Dex? Your engineer Nam Tehun speaks of ancient philosophies, guiding advanced technology. This seems contradictory. How can primitive ideas inform superior science? Perhaps, Dong-yuk suggested, the ideas are not primitive, just older. Sometimes wisdom comes before technology, not after. Consider this. Corvin culture, we believe that technological advancement automatically brings wisdom. Your people suggest the reverse might be true. Not exactly, Dong-yuk replied. We believe that wisdom and technology must grow together. One without the other creates imbalance. In the quantum physics laboratory, Dr. Una was demonstrating how human meditation techniques could stabilize quantum fields. Vaughan watched with fascination as she entered a meditative state, and the chaotic quantum fluctuations around her became perfectly ordered. Consciousness is creating macroscopic quantum coherence, Vaughan observed. This should be impossible at room temperature and normal atmospheric pressure. Perhaps impossible is just another word for unexpected, Una said as she emerged from meditation. Your people have focused on controlling quantum effects through mechanical precision. We learned to control them through mental discipline. How do you train for this ability? Asked another Nexari scientist who had joined the observation. Centuries of practice, Una explained. Long before we understood quantum mechanics, human cultures developed techniques for focusing consciousness and achieving mental clarity. We simply applied these ancient practices to modern physics. Engineer Nam Tehun was showing a group of alien researchers how Earth's spacefold drives incorporated principles from traditional Korean architecture. The quantum field generators were arranged according to the same geometric principles that created harmony in ancient buildings. Your technology follows aesthetic principles rather than pure efficiency, noted a hegemony researcher. This seems wasteful. Beauty and function are not opposites, Tehun replied. When something works in harmony with natural principles, it becomes both efficient and beautiful. Our drives consume less power than your wormhole generators precisely because they followed these aesthetic principles. The breakthrough moment came when Dex asked to try controlling a quantum field generator using human meditation techniques, despite his Corvan physiology being completely different from humans. He found that the focused mental state allowed him to achieve better stability than his traditional engineering methods. This is remarkable, Dex admitted. For thousands of years, Corvan science has dismissed consciousness as irrelevant to technology. We may have been wrong. Dr. Vaughan made a similar discovery when he temporarily disabled some of his cybernetic implants and relied more heavily on his remaining organic brain tissue. The biological components processed quantum probability in ways his mechanical enhancements could not replicate. Organic consciousness appears to have capabilities we never recognized, Vaughan reported to his Nexari colleagues. We may have been too hasty in replacing biological systems with mechanical ones. As the research project continued, the alien scientists began to understand that humanity's advantage was not just technological, it was philosophical. Earp's approach to science included consciousness as a fundamental component, not an inconvenience to be eliminated. Ambassador Lee Hiron received daily reports about the changing attitudes among the alien researchers. The joint project was accomplishing more than just scientific collaboration. It was breaking down the prejudices that had kept humanity isolated for centuries. They are beginning to see us as equals, Captain Dong-Yuk reported during one of their regular meetings. More than equals, in some ways. They are realizing that their purely mechanical approach to science has limitations. Good, Hiron replied. But we must be careful not to let success make us arrogant. The goal is not to replace their prejudice with our own, but to create genuine understanding between species. The research station had become a laboratory for more than quantum physics. It was testing whether different species could overcome centuries of assumptions and learn to see reality from new perspectives. The folding of space was revealing that minds, like reality itself, were far more flexible than anyone had imagined. Six months after the Nexus crisis resolution, the Galactic Council faced a crisis of their own making. Trade through the new human-created space corridor had increased efficiency by 300%. Species that had been isolated for centuries could now communicate and trade freely. The economic implications were staggering, and the political implications were even greater. Chancellor Breck stood before the full assembly, his usual confidence replaced by barely concealed anxiety. The Corvan Empire's power had always rested on controlling galactic trade routes. Now, humans had created a route that bypassed Corvan space entirely. The Council must address the human situation, Breck announced. Their technology has fundamentally altered the galactic balance of power. Ambassador Lee Hiron sat in what had once been the observer section. 3 days earlier, the Council had voted to grant Earth's full membership status. The decision had been unanimous, though not necessarily enthusiastic. Earth stands ready to share our space voting technology with all Council members, Hiron announced as she rose to address the Assembly. However, we believe certain conditions must be met. First, a murmur of surprise rippled through the hall. The established powers had expected to simply incorporate human technology into their existing systems. They had not anticipated that Earth might have demands of their own. What conditions? Asked Representative Zend, her mechanical voice carrying a note of suspicion. First, all species must abandon territorial restrictions on trade routes. Second, the Council must establish new protocols for peaceful first contact with emerging civilizations. Third, any species wishing to use our technology must commit to sharing their own scientific advances freely. Chancellor Breck's scaled features darkened. These conditions would restructure the entire foundation of galactic civilization. The established order has maintained peace for thousands of years, has it? Captain Kim Dong-yuk asked as he stood beside Ambassador Hiron. Or has it simply maintained the power of those who were strong enough to establish that order? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Everyone in the assembly knew that the current system favored the original founding species, while keeping newer civilizations in subordinate positions. Dr. Park Min-ji, Earth's chief negotiator, activated a holographic display showing galactic trade patterns. Under the current system, 70% of all interstellar commerce passes through territories controlled by just 3 species. This creates artificial scarcity and prevents smaller civilizations from participating fully in galactic society. Your point, Breck demanded. Our space-folding technology makes all trade routes equally accessible, Mingi explained. Geography becomes irrelevant when any point in space can be reached instantaneously. The old system of controlling strategic locations no longer provides advantages. The implications hit the assembly like a wave. If space could be folded freely, then the carefully maintained barriers that separated different regions of the galaxy would disappear. Species that had been isolated for political reasons could suddenly reach each other directly. Representative Zind processed this information through her cybernetic systems. You are proposing to eliminate the strategic advantages that maintain galactic stability. We are proposing to eliminate artificial barriers that maintain inequality, Ambassador Hiron corrected. True stability comes from cooperation, not control. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy watched as Earth's conditions sparked the greatest political upheaval in recorded history. Some species embraced the changes immediately, eager to escape the restrictions that had limited their development. Others resisted, fearing the loss of advantages they had held for millennia. The hegemony of Tal was among the first to accept Earth's terms. Their ambassador approached Dr. Kong Minho during a technical conference on quantum field theory. Dr. Kong, MY people are prepared to share our advances in stellar engineering in exchange for space-folding technology, the ambassador announced. We believe your vision of open scientific cooperation will benefit everyone. Minho smiled. Excellent. We look forward to learning from your expertise. The Nexar Collective took longer to decide. Representative Zind spent days in consultation with her government before finally approaching Earth's delegation. The collective has concluded that your technological philosophy has merit, she announced. We request permission to send students to your proposed interspecies quantum academy. Dr. Kong Minho had announced the academy during his address to the Council's Scientific Committee. Located on Earth, it would teach alien students not just the technical aspects of spacefolding, the philosophical foundations that made it possible. All species are welcome, Minho replied. But students must be prepared to question their fundamental assumptions about reality. The most surprising conversion came from Engineer Dex. The proud Corvin had requested personal assignment to the first class of alien students at the academy. His application essay spoke of discovering that true strength came from understanding, not domination. I wish to learn how my people can grow beyond our limitations, Dex wrote. The humans have shown us that wisdom can be more powerful than force. Chancellor Breck's government eventually collapsed when the Corvin people realized that cooperation with Earth offered more benefits than resistance. The new Corvin leadership immediately accepted Earth's conditions and requested assistance in restructuring their economy around the new galactic reality. Captain Kim Dong-yuk stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Council Station, watching ships from dozens of species come and go through quantum fold corridors. The sight that once would have taken weeks of wormhole travel now happened in moments. Hard to believe how much has changed, said Dr. Usajin as she joined him at the viewport. The technology was just the beginning, Dong Yuk replied. The real change was getting them to see each other differently. Ambassador Hiron approached them with the latest reports from Earth. The Academy has received applications from over 200 species. Dr. Kong says we'll need to expand the facilities. Again, good problems to have, Sejin said with a smile. The Academy had become more than an educational institution. It was a symbol of the new galactic order, where knowledge was shared freely and different approaches to science were valued rather than dismissed. Dr. Kong, Minho, stood in the Academy's main lecture hall, addressing a class that included representatives from 30 different species. Some breathed methane, others required high radiation levels to survive. But all shared a desire to understand the deeper principles behind space folding technology. Space wants to be folded, he explained, repeating the lesson that had started Earth's journey to the stars. We are not forcing it. We are simply learning to listen to what the universe is trying to tell us. A young Nexari student raised her hand. Professor Kong, how do we learn to listen? The same way humans learned, Minho replied. Through patience, humility, and the recognition that the universe is far more wonderful than any of us can imagine alone. Outside the Academy, ships folded space with the elegant simplicity that had once seemed impossible. But inside the classrooms, something even more remarkable was happening. Different species were learning to fold their minds around new possibilities, discovering that the greatest breakthroughs came not from those who thought they knew everything, but from those who remained open to learning. Captain Kim reflected on Earth's journey from galactic outcasts to respected teachers. Their greatest strength had never been their technology, but their willingness to see beyond prejudice and find unity in diversity. It was a lesson the galaxy had desperately needed to learn. The quantum diplomats had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, proving that sometimes the most profound revolutions began not with conquest, but with the simple act of showing others a better way to see the universe.